most people don't look at being triggered as something like a good thing, right? They think, what's wrong with me? Why am I reacting this way? Especially as us moms. I mean, I don't think I've ever talked to a mom or a human really that has been triggered, has reacted in a way that they're not proud of and not felt guilty about it, right? When we think about how we react to anything, right? It could be to your child spilling milk or to the guy cutting you off in traffic or whatever it is, it's our nervous system responding.
On today's episode of Empowered in Health, I have Courtney Osselaer here, and Courtney is just tremendous in the knowledge she has around emotional well-being. And how do we really tune into this piece of the puzzle as women, as business owners, and all the things? And so, Courtney, thank you so much for your time today. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here with you, Erin. Our conversations are always fire. I feel just so energized after them. So I'm excited for this one too.
I totally agree. And, you have an incredible story, an incredible background, an incredible story. You're a former pediatric RN turned emotional mastery and self-trust coach. You have an incredible story of your personal history and kind of what you've gone through and your journey. And I'd love to start there, Courtney. Can you kind of enlighten us and share a little bit about what brought you to the work you're doing now and kind of what your background has been?
Yeah, absolutely. I always try to make this as succinct as I possibly can, but it feels so big. It's almost impossible to do, but I'm going to try my hardest. So as a pediatric nurse, I was a pediatric nurse for 15 years. And in that work, I felt so fulfilled and felt like that was exactly where I was meant to be until it wasn't, right? Like I started to feel misaligned with Western medicine, the way things were going. I was seeking my own physical health remedies and finding I didn't want to go to a doctor and for them to just tell me, here's another pill to take, here's some more medication, like go see this specialist. I knew there was a better way. So I started on that journey of finding more natural health remedies, right? And so I started helping other women and families find that for themselves as well. And in 2018, I found out that I have a genetic mutation that predisposes me to a very rare aggressive form of stomach cancer that my dad actually died from when he was 46. And in that, my world was rocked, right? Like, okay, I have this genetic mutation. What do I do with it? And the recommendation was to have my stomach removed. And even as a nurse, my jaw dropped. Like, what are you talking about? Like, who lives without a stomach? Is that even possible? Right. And I figured out that lots of people live without stomachs and they're actually really healthy and doing pretty well. And after speaking to a geneticist, I determined that that was my course of action. I had 2 young kids. They were like toddler and younger. And I knew that I didn't want to even mess with that. I was like, my dad was diagnosed and died 3 months later, and I did not want to mess with that. So I had my stomach removed in 2019. They told me, oh, give your body a year to adjust and recoup and learn how to do things the new way. Well, let me tell you, it was probably the hardest year I've ever lived. And at least in the moment, that's how it felt, right? And lots of complications, in and out of the ER, in and out of the operating room, just having all sorts of issues. That bled into 2020. So COVID hits 2020, all of 2020, I'm like still having all these issues in and out of the ER, in and out of operating rooms during COVID, all this stuff. And finally, 2021, I had my last surgery and I hit like the depth of despair in my life, the worst, darkest time ever in my life. And so much so that I was in the hospital right after my last surgery and they had to have a psychologist come talk to me because I get emotional even still when I'm talking about it. It's so interesting how even as I've unwound and processed and done a bunch of inner work around this, it's still very present sometimes. But so long story short, I didn't end up in a psych ward. Thankfully, my husband was with me and very supportive and basically was like, Courtney, you need to snap out of this at least long enough to get out of the hospital or you know where this is going, right? So I was able to do so, came home, and in my recovery from the surgery, I had 2 open abdominal surgeries within 3 days of each other. Like, this is like where my life had gone. And in trying to recover from that and being home from work and all the things, I had this like divine message come to me of, Courtney, you are meant for more than what you're doing. I had no idea what that meant. I was like, okay, here we go, I guess. So
Yeah.
I really started a business with helping women and children and families find natural health remedies
Yeah.
because they were like I was. They didn't want to have a pill. They didn't want to have a doctor to say, go see the specialist and whatever. And being a nurse, I saw both sides of it, right? Of Western medicine has a time and a place, and it is very good at what it does, but it's not very good at chronic health and staying healthy. It's not health care, it's sick care, right? So, anyway, went down that road. In that process, found my emotional body and how connected it was to my physical body,
Yeah.
recognizing all of that intertwining and all the things, and ended up going through a 4-day intensive of EMDR. If you guys don't know what EMDR is, it's basically reprogramming your brain, right? Finding new neural pathways for dealing with trauma and all sorts of things. And my therapist had recommended this because of the things we had been talking about and working through. And in that, I had repressed memories come back from when I was a child. Okay, I'm 39 years old and having memories come back from when I was a child that I didn't even know existed my entire life.
Yeah.
Big trauma, sexual trauma. I was molested by my dad for most of my childhood.
Yeah.
So, as you can imagine, this rocks your world, right? And I ended up taking a leave of absence from my hospital job and dove into healing and processing and like, holy shit balls, like my life is different than I ever thought it was. I had no clue. So having to process all of that and really have better understanding. And it was shining the light on these shadows that I didn't even know were there. And it was so incredible. Although it was hard, obviously it was very challenging, very difficult. It was very like freeing and liberating of, oh, like I'm understanding myself on a whole new level. This issue that I have with whatever, this is why. This, the relationship with my husband, with different things, with intimacy, this is why. Like this is making so much sense, right? So, while healing from that, I was actually in the middle of my coaching certification. So I'm like, while I'm out on leave of absence from work, I decided I cannot go back. I'm not meant to go back. I'm meant to dive head first into this coaching world and like leave that behind and do what I'm doing now, which is supporting moms mostly in being able to parent in the ways that they never had, right? We grow up, we have our parents and they do the best they can. There's no shade on I don't think on any parent, right? Even my dad, like I have a level of compassion and understanding. I don't think I've ever said that out loud for him.
Yeah.
Because whatever he went through caused him to be the way he is, right? If you've ever read that book, What Happened to You, like I think every human on the planet should read that book, but I just have that level of compassion for him, even in what he did to me. And so our parents aren't trying to hurt us, right? And they're doing the best they can. And we can do better. We can choose to do better and do things differently so that we can raise our kids so that they do feel loved and seen and heard and valued to a level that just like improves our planet exponentially, right? Like I just envision it like just being vibration being raised, like every mom and child I work with, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my journey and that's where I'm at and that's how I got here.
Well, first and foremost, I can't thank you enough for your transparency because you are the definition of service, like service in the sense of being really vulnerable for other people, right? Because you have been through so much in your life and you understand the power of connection when you get to that level of vulnerability and share your story, right?
Yeah,
exactly. And, I've experienced levels like that in my own journey and how it can be so incredibly uncomfortable to go to that depth emotionally and to figure out like, how do I discern the things I've been through and how do I name the feelings I'm having and how do I figure out what my experience has been? And the only way through that is through it. And you sharing your story and then coming out and sharing the level of transformation you've experienced, the level of understanding you've slowly built, and the level of work that you've chosen to do because you are so committed to your own growth as a woman, but also as a mom and the people that you serve is just incredibly important and powerful work, Courtney. And I want to kind of call that to the light because it's big, right? Everything that
big.
everything that you just shared is big, right?
Yeah.
It's the depth of true emotional work. And again, I just can't thank you enough for your transparency, because sharing your story like this is not easy, right? Yeah. We know the value and how much it can help other people and how much it also helps ourselves, right? Yeah. With healing and learning about ourselves and trying to figure out like what actually serves us best. But it doesn't make it easy. It always has this layer of triggering something or kind of digging up something. And like you had talked about, it really is a very real process. And so again, I'm just grateful to connect with you. And I can't thank you enough for you sharing the road you've been on, because I know 110% somebody listening to this is going to relate to some level of something inside of what you've gone through. And, one of the things that you talked a lot about was this idea of, these little pieces to your story that can kind of trigger you in some way or help you kind of identify, okay, now I get why I feel this way. Or now I understand this a little bit more about myself. And that's kind of what I want to dig into a little bit more, because this is that real work that you have to choose to do. And I know on my journey, and even with the women that I serve, the clients that I work with, women that I speak to, like, this is hard work. You have to really choose to be open-minded to this idea of getting really uncomfortable and trying to go through this process of getting deep into your emotion, getting deep into learning who you are and why. And so I know one of the things that you've shared with me is this idea of how triggers or even things that come up in your life aren't necessarily a bad thing or a problem. They're more of a teacher. They're more of a way for you to actually learn more about yourself or learn more about your life. And so can you explain a little bit more to you when you think about that concept, or you think about how you teach this to the moms, to the families that you serve? What exactly does that mean? And how can you help us kind of dig through that a little bit more?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics, because most people don't look at being triggered as something like a good thing, right? They think, what's wrong with me? Why am I reacting this way? Especially as us moms. I mean, I don't think I've ever talked to a mom or a human really that has been triggered, has reacted in a way that they're not proud of and not felt guilty about it, right? Yeah. And so when we look at our triggers, when I say they're an opportunity for learning and for growth, it goes pretty deep here. So I'm gonna go there.
Love it.
When we think about how we react to anything, right? It could be to your child spilling milk, or to the guy cutting you off in traffic, or whatever it is. It's our nervous system responding, right? It's a knee-jerk thing that happens automatically without us even really being consciously aware of it if we haven't done that work yet. Yeah. So when we can create this safety for our nervous system to be able to slow down enough to recognize the trigger, we do that by going into our body. So the body keeps a score. You've probably read that book. I think we actually talked about that before. If anybody else read that book, like, our bodies literally do, and they hold on to everything. And when we respond, when we're reacting to something on a nervous system level, our body actually feels it before our brain even knows what's going on. So if you think about a time where you were just so angry at somebody really pissed you off, and you can feel that heat in your face, you can feel the sweat in your armpits, right? Like, you can feel your heart racing. All of those things happened far before you could even name, I'm so pissed off right now. So when it goes to learning what our triggers, that's our first step, right? Is learning how to do the somatic work, being able to recognize, because a lot of people, believe it or not, you might be listening to this and being like, I have no idea what my body feels like when I'm pissed off. There's a lot of people who have no idea what that is. And so it's really about learning that and spending time there just to recognize it's not this extravagant thing. It's literally just being present with self and slowing down enough to recognize that, right? I actually have a journal that I created called the Trigger Reflection Journal that helps people walk through this, because it's difficult to notice in the moment what's happening. But if you later in the day, or maybe the next day, you go back to this time of, man, that thing really pissed me off, I wonder what's going on there, and you can journal it out. It has prompts to question you through it. And then to go even deeper on this, right, is these triggers are often an old version of ourselves, often a very young version of ourselves. So we go into the inner child work of spending time with that little Erin or that little Courtney and giving that love and compassion or whatever it is they needed, right? These reactions are your little inner child working so hard to keep you safe and comfortable.
Yeah.
So when it comes to doing like the deep trauma work, there's that, right? But then there's also this, if you're trying to run your business and you just have this little reaction and you don't, and it's like, we can do that right now in 5 seconds and like move past it, right? Yeah. We don't have to ignore it. It's not about bypassing it and shoving it away. I love to use this analogy because it just speaks to my heart so much, because as a pediatric nurse, as a mom, like kids are my passion and my heart and my soul. And this is why I do the work that I do, right? When you think of your inner child, however you want to look at it, think of it as like an actual real living, breathing child.
Yeah.
When we have our toddlers at home, if they're tantruming and throwing a fit, we're not just going to shove them in the room by themselves and say, deal with it, take care of yourself. We don't do that. We get down on their level. We ask them, what do they need? We figure out, are they hungry? Are they tired? Do they need to pee? Or, like whatever the case may be. And we give them what they need, right? And that's exactly what we're doing with our inner children. We're getting down on their level. We're slowing down and saying, what do you need, babe? Like, what's going on here? Yeah. I
love that. And, the inner child conversation is so interesting to me. And it's something that I've had to continue to kind of warm up to, because kind of like we talked about, it's one of those things that feels uncomfortable. Like you just don't know exactly how to navigate it or where to start or what that work looks like, which is why it can be so beneficial to connect with practitioners and coaches like you who really can guide you through doing this work. And that's one of the things I'm most passionate about helping women understand is there's so many layers to our health. Nothing is in isolation. Like you talked about in your story.
Yeah.
Emotional well-being is wildly attached to physical well-being. Physical well-being is attached to mental well-being. Mental well-being is attached to our spiritual well-being and so much more. It is this interconnected web. Nothing happens on its own. And we are not meant to just figure out all of these different components in isolation either. We are not meant to do it by ourselves. And so I just appreciate you sharing more, Courtney, about just these different facets of what you can do when you're trying to identify, like, why am I so triggered? Or what is going on? What do I need to address? What are the things that I can start to dig into? It's just incredibly powerful to learn that and to really kind of continue to dig into the reasons that you might be the way you are.
Yeah.
One of the things you've shared a little bit is about how you serve moms, right? And a lot of what you shared here, I literally was sitting here thinking to myself, I wish I would have talked to Courtney yesterday after the night I had last night with my son, because I got really, really triggered last night. And I'm sitting here now thinking to myself, what are the things that I need to work through more? Like, what are the things that I need to identify more? Why did I get so triggered? Yeah. And so my question for you is, for the mom that's listening to this, who knows, like, she gets triggered, she gets overwhelmed. Maybe she hasn't gone deep enough into these emotional layers yet, or she doesn't know where to start. Like, how would you help her start to take some small steps to maybe make some different choices or identify that pause inside of like the feeling in the body versus the nervous system versus the mind? And how do you essentially get into that place of making a different choice and pattern interrupting? Because it's not easy to do. And so I'd love your thoughts on that. We'll get back to our conversation shortly after this message. If you are an overwhelmed and completely confused mom who just wants a simplified, easy to follow, and understandable plan when it comes to their health and wellness journey, then you're in the right place. As a wellness coach, I focus most on empowering women to follow a highly personalized and bio-individual plan that actually gets you results and that feels sustainable for your longevity. I'd love to invite you to set up a free coaching call to talk about your health and wellness journey. Head to erinshreer.com/coaching to set up your call today. Again, that URL is erinshreer.com/coaching to set up your call. And to make it even easier, head to the show notes of this podcast and click free coaching session to set up your call ASAP. Now let's dive back into the conversation.
And everybody's so different too, right? First, I want to start with, if you are that mom that you're catching yourself being triggered and then you feel guilty immediately after, like, again, there's nothing wrong here. There's nothing going wrong. You're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. I 100% believe you're right where you're meant to be. And this being triggered, this reaction that you're not proud of, is simply an invitation for you to look at yourself a little bit and say, okay, what can I do here? And something that you mentioned, I think it's really important to point out, is it's not about doing more, right? I think we often think that I have to do more, I have to do better, I need to be better, all these things that we just like load on ourselves. And that doesn't help us at all. It just creates more pressure and more stress and more self-sabotaging, really, to be honest. Yeah. And so what it really looks like, it sounds so simple, but it's about, the first thing is recognizing and being mindful. Because we are go, go, go all day, every day, constantly doing something. And so we don't even take the time to just be here in the present moment.
Yep.
And you don't have to spend 20 minutes. You don't have to spend an hour doing this. It can be throughout your day. One of my favorite exercises is when you're doing the dishes. That's something we all do most days, right? Multiple times a day. Or washing our hands after, whatever. Just being in that moment of really engaging all 5 of your senses and going through that and experiencing the water or the soap. What does it smell like? What does it feel like? What are you hearing? Are you tasting anything? Running through those 5 senses. And that helps you get in your body. Like, this is literally like rudimentary, fundamental to help you get in your body. Because like I mentioned before, we often don't recognize the feelings with the body sensations. So that's one of the first things. And then you can move. And again, everybody's different, and at the speed that this goes and all the things, I'm all about meeting everybody where they are right now. It's not this like I have a framework that I go through, but it's like not this like, it's like very flexible and flowy. And, so once you've kind of mastered that, like in your body, being able to slow down to be mindful, then immediately after a trigger, it's taking a moment, maybe excusing yourself for a couple of minutes to go to the bathroom or whatever, and just breathing and like, what's going on in my body? Am I feeling the lump in my throat? Am I feeling the tightness in my stomach? Like, what is there? That's the first thing. I don't even take it further than that. Like, we master that before we go to the, what does this mean? What do I need? Right? Yeah. It's really like being present with what's there.
Yeah. So good. And honestly, like you said, not always easy to do. I love that you talked about bringing attention to the 5 senses. This is something that I've actually learned a lot in occupational therapy. With all of my kiddos have been through a lot of different therapies. One of our kiddos has been through more extensive therapies because of his genetic disorder and some of the behavioral hurdles and things that we work through with him and the ways that he needs support. But occupational therapy talks about this all the time, and how when you can get into just identifying something in your moment, in where you are in present moment, and by pulling those senses in, how much it can help you get into your body. And I know for me, this is something that I absolutely struggle with. Like you said, I think moms struggle with this because we're go, go, go. We're constantly taking care of everybody else, making sure everything else is checked off, making sure everyone else has what they need. And we get to this place where we start to abandon like who we are, what we need, actually being in our bodies, actually being present with our own feelings and emotions. And I know this is something you talk about too. And so I would love for you to share a little bit about why this can be so detrimental and draining for us when we live in that place of not going inward, of not like getting to these little practices where we get into our body, and essentially how that shows up for us day to day in our health and more.
Yeah. Oh, this conversation is huge because it literally, you're like leaking your energy all day, every day, when you're not in your body, when you're not honoring self, when you're not doing some of the inner work. And I want to point out that some people's inner work is deeper than others, and there's no comparison, right? Everybody's on their own journey, and it doesn't have to be so scary. Like, yes, it can be challenging, it can be uncomfortable, but it can also be fun and uplifting and like all sorts of cool stuff happening. So I wanted to put that out there, but and now I'm totally getting sidetracked because that's what my brain does. I'm like, here I am, a million miles a minute. Okay, what'd you ask me again? You got to ask it again.
Self-abandonment.
Yeah, yeah,
We're
yeah.
talking about
And energy. And yes, it like you're
energy
leaking
and
your
health.
energy. And we wonder why we're so exhausted all the time. It's not just from the physical doing,
Yeah.
it's this emotional load that we are carrying, not only ours, but everybody else's around us.
Yeah.
And so when we start to do that inner work and start recognizing and discerning what is mine to actually carry, what is mine to hold, you start to build this capacity, not only for yourself and your emotions, which just naturally increases your energy level. But then you have this capacity to hold the people around you, your loved ones, your kids, your husband, your spouse, whoever that may be that you really care about, from a place of caring and empathy without absorbing it all, without sucking it all in and draining your energy, right? I
Yes.
picture everybody being in their own light globe and having their own energy being fully contained and still interacting and bumping into each other and being able to have that compassion and that empathy, because I think that's so incredibly important, right? That's one of my superpowers is empathy. And like my whole life I was just a sponge of like sucking everybody else's stuff, and I'm like, oh, I'm not supposed to do
Yeah.
that. I'm supposed to be my own, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yep.
what? So when we do that, we create this energy that is unlike, I mean, if you've been living in fight flight your whole life, you have no idea what it even feels like, right? Like
Yeah.
and that was me, and I experienced that with a lot of clients and other women. But coming back to that, coming back to self, coming back to being able to honor what's here, and not from like a place of selfishness, because
Yeah.
when we are doing that, we're actually able to just give and pour and hold so much more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. That's such
Yeah.
a powerful reminder. And I can relate to that. Like I live so much of my life just sucking up everything
Yeah.
around me, holding myself like responsible for everyone else's feelings,
Mm.
all of
Yep.
the other things. And I've had to learn a lot about ownership, right? Like what's actually
Mm.
mine to own versus
Yeah.
what's someone else's to own, including my kids, including my spouse and my marriage, right? Including the working
Yeah.
relationships I have, etc. We really have to understand this boundary around ownership. And to your point, how much more you can show up with care, compassion, empathy, focus, like a sense of calm when you
Yeah.
actually are paying attention to what it is that you need, what it is that you need to own, and then releasing the rest. And I love that you
Exactly.
talked about that. And I know one of the things that you've also shared with me about how this can really start to change your relationships with your kids, with your spouse, with your friends, etc. When you live in your own level of energy and you go inward and understand really what it is that you need, like again, you're able to show up in a totally different way. Can you
Yeah.
speak a little bit about that as far as like how that looks in real life when you think about
Yeah.
better relationship with your kids, better relationship with your husband,
Yeah.
better relationship with your friends or in your working world or whatever it is? Why is that on a very tangible level?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, we hear this phrase all the time of like, you can't love others until you love yourself, right? You can't even know what it means to love others until you can extend that for yourself. The same thing goes with connection. If
Yeah.
you're not connected to yourself, and I mean that on a rudimentary level, this very basic, if you're not connected, your body, if you're
Yeah.
not feeling that, it's not possible to really feel connection with others, to not only like have them feel you, but to you feel them as well, right? And receive what others are actually extending to you and giving to you. So that's really, that's bare bones what it's about.
Yeah.
100%.
100%.
Yeah. And when you said like, especially being able to discern your emotion, your stuff from your spouse and your kids, you said it's not even your kids and your spouse, it's especially your kids and your spouse. You spend your most time with them, you're closer to them in proximity than anybody else ever. That's actually the most important people
Yes.
to like be able to discern, because they're the ones that they don't mean to, they're not intentionally doing this, but they're sucking you dry because they're always there, right? So when
Yep.
you can discern that, it creates this just newfound energy and connection with them, which then leads to kids
Yeah.
actually listening when you talk to them, kids
Yep.
actually doing what you ask them to do, kids, like husband actually hearing what you need in the moment. And it's
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah.
It's incredible. One of the
Yeah.
things I want to recall that's really important that I want to make sure we revisit is how you said showing up in this capacity, especially for your kids and for your family and for your husband and for your partner or whatever, it's such an important mindset shift to really embrace. And I know for me, and I'm sure women can relate to this, sometimes I've had seasons where it's been the opposite. Like I've literally shown up the worst for my family because I was giving so much to my work or volunteering or doing anything outside in the community or whatever it is, like feeling like I had to serve and add all this value and make this massive impact. And I would show up so depleted in my own home. And I think this can be very, very common for us as women because we get into these mindsets or these beliefs that I have to be doing all of these things and serving in all of these ways and showing up for all of these people. And at the end of the day, if you're doing all of that, but you're depleting yourself to the point where you're showing up the least for the people in your home, we have it wrong, right?
Exactly.
We have it wrong.
We have it. Yes, exactly. And I was there too, as working in the hospital for, 12 plus hours. I was there too. And I think you're right. It is very common. And we have it backwards when we're at that place. And again, not from a place of blame and shame and I should feel bad about this and all. No, like just recognizing, this isn't how I want to show up.
It's that awareness, like you've talked about. It's got to be that mindfulness and that awareness. And that's really the first step in recognizing and realizing, okay, I have to make changes. I have to figure out something that's going to help me work on these specific things because this is not how I want to show up. But more than that, this isn't how you deserve to show up, right? Which is why going inward and doing this deep-rooted emotional work is so incredibly important when we think about overall holistic health, because we can't ignore it. Like you've already talked about, the body keeps the score. And so even if you're doing everything possible physically to take care of yourself, if you're neglecting everything mentally and emotionally, years of potential trauma, anything that's deep-rooted and it's just manifesting underneath the surface, it will be an anchor that keeps you stuck for forever in some capacity. And it will not allow you to fully show up in your life for your family and most importantly for yourself the way that you can and the way that you deserve. Exactly. And so Courtney, I can't thank you enough for your incredible expertise and just everything that you've shared today. I want to quickly talk a little bit about the woman that's listening to this that knows like she wants to take some steps, right? She wants to figure out, how do I really do this work? Like, I know that there is emotional work that I probably need to work through. Like I said, I relate to Courtney's story in some way. Maybe you relate a little bit to some of the things I've shared. And like there's some things I need to change, but I don't know where to start or how. Like, what are the practical steps you would give that person that's listening to this who wants to rebuild self-trust, who wants to go inward, but just doesn't know what to do?
Absolutely. So I see this as people being in two camps, right? The one that's like ready to go. That person, they're like, let's go. I'm ready to like get some, just some action steps and Book an emotional reset session with me. For all your listeners, it's going to be totally complimentary because I just adore you and just having this space has been incredible. So book a session with me. Erin will have the links and all the things that you need for that. It'll be a 45 to 50-minute session where we dig into a trigger and I ask you lots of questions to get to the root of what's going on with you. And then you can get some clarity on what the next step is, whether that's working with me or not. Like there's no pressure there. And I'm here. I'm all about serving you where you are and what your next best step is. So there's that. And then there's the other camp of the people who are like, yeah, this does really resonate, but I'm not ready to dive in yet. I'm just not quite sure. Go ahead and download my trigger reflection journal. It's a great place to start. And it walks you through like all the steps of what's my body feeling like? What do I feel in my body? What emotion is attached to that? And just to kind of help you start exploring that for yourself. Yeah.
So good. One question I do want to ask as a follow-up, when I think about even my own journey, Courtney, why do you feel like, I know obviously we're go, constant stress, lots going on, but why do you feel like it can be so hard to recognize feelings in your body? Like, what is it that actually causes it to be such a disconnection sometimes?
Yeah. So in my experience with all the women that I've helped and in my own personal experience, we are really trained to not pay attention.
Yeah.
As little girls from a really young age, we are trained to pay attention to everybody else's emotions. Yep. I mean, it's just society, the way it's been. So when you learn that from a really young age, when you get to be 40 plus, however old you are, well into adulthood, it's going to take some time to like reprogram that and to re-recognize and really understand what that even is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We've been taught for our entire lives to push our own emotions down because it's either too much or you're not enough, or like whatever message it is that you got either subliminally or directly. That's why. That's 100% why. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And
I appreciate sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always heard personally that I'm loud and too much and all the things. And so when I even reflect back on my own story, like that's a lot of the internal work that I've had to do related to just understanding who told me that, where did it come from? How is it translating now? How does this lead to what I need to continue to recognize in my own body? And the thing that I appreciate most about everything you've shared, Courtney, is how like there's fluidity to this. It's not like this rigid thing that we can figure out from A to Z. Like that's not how really any topic in health is. And I talk about this with my clients too, because the body is an ecosystem and nothing is exactly as we expect, because the body isn't this like calculated machine where you give this input and it's always this output. It has to be some level of fluidity to it, and always this level of learning and choosing to be curious rather than completely defeated, or like you can't continue to press forward because things feel hard or uncomfortable or you're still learning. And so I love that you're just continuing to kind of normalize this idea of, you know, being curious, finding a way to dig into this work, and, you know, finding the fun in it too. I really appreciated that you shared that, yeah, it can be hard and it can be really uncomfortable, but it also can be so freeing and liberating and fun. And I've realized that a lot of the work that I've had to do, and quite honestly still do so much of every single day in some capacity, because it's just a necessity for our overall well-being. So I can't thank you enough, Courtney. I adore you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Right back at you. And I feel like I need to expand on this concept that you're saying, like it's all fluid. We're not machines, we're human, and radically accepting your humanness. Yeah. Like if you can just do that one thing, your world will change forever and ever.
Especially as moms, because to your point, like you said, we get really hard on ourselves. We beat ourselves up. You know, when we get triggered and make the choice that we probably shouldn't have or didn't really want to, like it gets to become this very big mind game. And I literally was inside of this last night when I got triggered by my son, which wasn't really by my son. It was more of like the situation. And, you know, it's just interesting to continue to work through these different layers of who we are. And I just appreciate you continuing to normalize that we are human beings. We are not meant to just have it all figured out. And, you know, it really is a journey, and I can't thank you enough for sharing so much on the emotional side today. You know, can you quickly share, where can people find you online? Where can they connect with you, and how can they learn more about the work you do?
Yeah, so you can go to my website at CourtneyCoachesWellness.com. I have all my social links at the bottom of that page. That's probably the easiest place to go. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn.
Love it.
You can find my go ahead.
I was going to say, we are going to make sure that everything is linked in the show notes. So if you want to connect with Courtney, you know, set up an emotional reset session with her, look at her freebies, go on her website, look at the incredibly empowering work that she's doing. This is a really important part of our wellness. And, you know, she's a great resource to start to dig into. So again, make sure you head to the show notes to connect with Courtney. And Courtney, thank you again for your incredible story and your time today. I am just so grateful to connect.
Thank you so much for this connection and for allowing me to be here and share and spread this message of everything we talked about.
Yeah, of course. All right, friend, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I know balancing time and energy can be a challenge, and I'm so proud of you for listening in and investing in your wellness journey. I feel incredibly grateful to connect with you and for the opportunity to share more knowledge, stories, and encouragement related to all things wellness. I would love to hear how this podcast has served you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review on either iTunes or Spotify. Your support truly means the world to me and helps me reach more women just like you and me who are looking to transform their health from the inside out. Plus, when you share this episode with a friend, we invite more women in to learn alongside us. What a gift. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more we know, the better we can do. For ourselves, for our families, and our future. Well done on taking the step towards a healthier, happier you. Until next week, stay empowered and stay well.